Today I want to talk about Dire Straits' first album, simply called Dire Straits. I think it's a very, very important album. I think it's very special for a first album, in as much as it's quite unique in the sense that everything they did after that, after this album in 1978, everything they did after it, you can somehow trace the roots back to this particular album. Everybody knows, of course, the song Sultans of Swing, which is on this album. But I wonder how many other tracks most people can, not Dire Straits fans, of course, can name from this album. And I think the album stands up in its own right, just like, in fact, Please Please Me from the Beatles stands up in its own right, but has no connection almost with what's happening even just a few years later, whereas this one certainly does. What is also interesting about this album is that, like the Beatles, Dire Straits were a working band when they went into the recording studio in Basin Street to record this. And I think this really, really shows. When you hear this album, you're hearing a band playing. But more about that later, because a little bit of context might be useful. And for those people who are not Dire Straits fans, maybe it's interesting just to have a little bit of background on the band. Now, if you know everything there is to know about Mark, David, John Ilsley and Pick Withers, then just go into the description below, click on the chapters, and you can go straight into the album track one, and then you'll hear what my take is, and I'll play some excerpts from the album here in my listening room. But for those who want to stick with me, let's go back and find out just a little bit about Mark and David Knopfler, first of all, and then I'll talk a little bit about the rest of the band. Okay, so Mark's Knopfler's father was Erwin Knopfler. He was a Hungarian Jewish architect who fled Hungary in Budapest during the Second World War. And he eventually ended up in England, in the north of England, I think Newcastle, or even in Scotland. He married a lady called Louisa Mary Knopfler, or Laidler is her maiden name. And she was an English teacher from Newcastle upon Tyne. So surprise, surprise, most, I think, of their married life was spent in Newcastle upon Tyne. I think that's where Mark and David were brought up. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not an expert on this, but I just wanted to share the research I did and the things that I know, which I'm pasting in between anyway. So let's just get some timing. What was this like? So Mark was born in 1949. He had an older sister, Ruth, and a younger brother, David, who we know, of course, from the band itself. David was born in 52. So Mark did a degree in English at Leeds University, and he worked in journalism for a while and taught English at a further education college in Essex and then in Leeds. And I think all of these elements are coming together now. Mother, an English teacher, he studies English, he's teaching, he's doing a little playing guitar and playing in local bands in the evening, trying to earn a living. So that's Mark. Now, David went to study social science at Bristol Polytechnic, but moved to London. I don't think he completed the course because he was really into the music scene. So David, the younger brother, he's the one who's really into the music scene, and he ends up sharing a flat with John Ilsley, who becomes the bass player of Dire Straits. And what I find interesting about the fact that they share a flat together is that they also both come, well, no, he and Pick Withers, the drummer, both come from Leicester. And so I find these little coincidences. They didn't know each other in Leicester, I believe, but it's interesting that he and David are sharing a flat, and John Ilsley is from Leicester. He's also born in 1949, and he studied sociology in Goldsmiths College in London. So you can see, so he's come from Leicester down to London to study sociology at Goldsmiths, which was quite a trendy subject in the 70s. Really into music, playing bass, whatever. And he ends up meeting up with David, and they share a flat together. Now, Pick Withers, the drummer of Dire Straits, now he was also born, well, he was born in 48, so he was 1 year older than Mark and John. But he'd already got quite a lot of experience of playing in lots of different bands. I've made some notes here. He played with Dave Edmunds, Jerry Rafferty. I think went on tour with Gallagher and Lyle. But there's quite a few sessions. He was known as session drummer. Influenced in the days, back in the day, from jazz, I believe. And this is really, really clear when you hear him playing. But I think he played in a school band or something like that, a marching band, as a child. So here we have David and John sharing a flat and Pick Withers hanging out. Now, interestingly enough, I always thought that, Dire Straits was Mark Knopfler's band, and he sort of got his brother to get involved, and that they would both travel to London. That isn't the case. In fact, as far as I can see in my research, it seems to be that whilst Mark is teaching in Leeds and playing in clubs and pubs in the evening, bars, trying to scratch out a living, his brother David is starting to form a band, and it's David who invites him to come down from Leeds and join them in 77 in London. And then he moved into the council flat in southeast London in Deptford. Now, Deptford in the 70s wasn't the most, should we say, the poshest place, where the wealthy people hung out, far from it. And you can imagine now that these musicians were all sharing a tiny little flat together, and they used to use it to rehearse in. So it must have driven the neighbours mad. I don't know how that worked, to be honest. So anyway, they managed to get times to rehearse in the local Deptford community spaces and like that. And they were working and doing the North London pub scene. Now, at that same point in time, I was living in a flat in southeast London in Beckenham, where David Bowie came from, and a slightly different kind of group from obviously earlier. At that time, I was living in a flat with some friends of mine sharing a flat. And I was writing songs and playing the guitar and dreaming of making a career. But it was also the time of punk rock, and everything in the world was changing. By now, in 77, 78, punk had already I think the Sex Pistols are probably already broken up. But bands like the Ramones and Talking Heads were all very, very busy in the public eye. So on the one hand, you would have ABBA, and you would have Fleetwood Mac, and then you would have Saturday Night Fever. And on the other hand, you'd have punk. And then somewhere in between, this album came along. And I'm excited about this album because I remember one day being at my girlfriend's house, and her brother came in with this album. And I said, "What's that?" He said, "It's Dire Straits. It's just come out." And he put it on, and I was blown away from the first note. I thought, well, what is this? Is this country? Is it rock? Is it folk? What is it? And for me, I'd never heard anything quite like it before. And I was instantly taken in by this. Now, the Dire Straits in those days, whose name was taken from the fact that they were in dire straits. They were absolutely broke, it seems, had no money at all. They used to do the London pub scene, as I said. So typically that was like the Hope and Anchor in Islington, and Dingwalls in Camden, and the Half Moon in Putney. All these are places I went to as a teenager to listen to bands. I never saw Dire Straits live in those locations, but, you know, we had Kilburn on the High Roads, which was Ian Jury's band in the beginning. And then we had Graham Parker and the Rumour, Brinsley Schwartz, who were playing with Graham Parker. Lots of other really great bands. And if you don't know Graham Parker and the Rumour's music, dig it out. I'll put a link in because it's really, really good stuff. And that was really the London scene. So here we are with Dire Straits playing in North London pubs. And one day they made a kind of a demo tape, and a DJ called Charlie Gillett. And I remember hearing his BBC Radio London program. He played a demo tape version of Sultans of Swing. A record company, Talent Scout, found them, heard it, and the rest, as they say, is history. So in July 78, they also, after this album came out, just after, the BBC in those days used to have a series called In Concert. And this went out on radio. I think it was Radio 2. And they would do live concerts, normally recorded in their studios in Shepherd's Bush, I think it was. But anyway, that's they used to make these live recordings. And in those days, what I did, along with probably thousands of others, I used to get everything ready, get my stereo tuner connected up, and then get my reel-to-reel tape machine. I didn't have a Revox A77 in those days. I had an Akai 4000 DS. And I would record them. I would record the whole series of it In Concert, and there was Jethro Tull and all sorts of bands. And so it was that really, broke them through. But that 78 recording from the BBC was released back in the 90s, I think around 95. And it's really, really worth listening to. Again, I'll put a link or dig it out because it's easy to find. Live at the BBC, it's called. Because what you hear there is Dire Straits in the studio with no overdubbing or double tracking. It's recorded live in the studio. And you really, really get a feel of how they sounded in those North London pubs doing the circuits. And you also hear Mark Knopfler sort of apologetically introducing his songs. I think he's sort of embarrassed about the lyrics even of his songs. Maybe he finds them a little naive. Who knows? But there we go. There's a little bit of a background on Dire Straits. So now to the album itself. Now, the album opens with a track called Down to the Waterline. Now, as you all know, or my regular viewers will know, I'm always fascinated in how bands open their LPs, their albums, their CDs. And what I find really, really interesting is where I mentioned in Beethoven, he might in something go ba-da or da-da-da-da, and everybody hears it and go, oh, right, shut up, it started. What Mark Knopfler, or the engineer, who is Rhett Davies, and Rhett Davies, as you know, if you saw the previous video I did on the Great Recording series, was the engineer for Eno's Ambient, for some of it, the Ambient album. Anyway, Rhett Davies is there. So I think it's Mark Knopfler or one of the band or an idea. They start really, really quietly. And so much so that I've measured it, and you will see on the chart, I'll put a picture of it up. It's about minus 52 dB, minus 50 dB from the actual point of when the music properly comes in, when the song starts real. And that is so quiet that if there's any noise in the apartment or where you're listening, and take into account the noise that you get from an LP and a record, and bearing in mind most of us didn't have super duper LPs in those days, record playing equipment, it meant that normally the very first note or noise or whatever you want to call it in this record you don't hear, but thanks to CD you can. And there would be this point where you think, oh, shh, 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 it started, because someone hears something. Has it really started? What is that? Or is that something else? Is that a foghorn in the distance? So it starts with this really mysterious noise, and then it comes in and they play away. Let's just give it a whirl. Okay, so the first track, Down to the Waterline, he's obviously reminiscing about a relationship he had. Now, interestingly enough, this is recorded in 77. He's born in 49. So in my reckoning, he's nearly 30 years old. So he's had a lot of experience. So I can imagine the dire straits of being short of money being quite apparent there. And when we just refer back to his life, you can imagine when he moved from Leeds to London, down to and probably visited the Thames or wherever, you can imagine his mum and dad must be beside themselves, because his dad would have worked really, really hard to make something of himself in this new strange land called the United Kingdom. And there's both of his sons, one with a university degree, one who dropped out, living in a flat in London, obviously broke. Anyway, I digress, and I come back to the point because in this album, he's using a lot of water and river imagery. Of the 9 songs on the album, 5 of them directly reference rivers, waves, sea, shorelines. And this is absolutely no different from any of the others. Now, from that introduction, I think it's clear that you can imagine them playing live all those years later, 5 albums later, whatever, and the big arenas they ended up playing in. And you can imagine those long, slow, extended sort of introductions like you heard here, just extemporized and developed further. So here it comes into the track, and then obviously you have all the wonderful sounds that, as I said, bamboozled me, saying, what is this? But I just want to capture maybe some of the lyrics here. Bear with me. So this is Down to the Waterline. Sweet surrender on the quayside. You remember we used to run and hide. In the shadows of the cargoes I took you one time, and we're counting all the numbers down to the waterline. Near misses on the dog-leap stairways, French kisses in the darkened doorways, a foghorn blowing out wild and cold, a policeman shines a light upon my shoulder. Up comes a coaster, fast and silent in the night. Over my shoulder, all you can see are the pilot lights. No money in our jackets and our jeans are torn. Your hands are cold, but your lips are warm. She can see him on the jetty where they used to go. She can feel him in the places where the sailors go. When she's walking by the river and the railway line, she can still hear him whisper, let's go down to the waterline. Now, one of the elements about Dire Straits that I think we shouldn't overlook is the fact that he did study English. He did work for a short time as a journalist on the Yorkshire Post. He obviously, as a journalist, would observe. Studying English, he would have studied all the great poets. So the style of poetry he uses, you'll find influences from all sorts of, from Yeats, all sorts of poets from the past. I don't even want to list them because there are far too many. Even people like Bob Dylan, you will see he's like a journalist pulling up images, but he's bringing in his own stories all of the time. You'll notice his love songs, even later on in Romeo and Juliet, are very much in this style. They're sort of observational. It's almost as if he's looking down on himself and the woman in question. Or it's written, you know, he can see and she can. It's often a little bit distant rather than I felt you, I had this. So I like that, and I think that's what helps create the imagery that we've come to know so well with Dire Straits. Now, you must have noticed, and if this was the very first time you've ever heard this album, which is quite possible, how exciting is that? There was a solo, a guitar solo. So I'm going to take you to the first guitar solo on the track, and let's just have a little listen to what's going on. On my shoulder. Here we go. really fast licks, slick licks. In the UK, in London in the 70s, we didn't have the country pickers, the American style, so obviously in front of us. Yes, I was aware of people like Django Reinhardt, was really impressive, but because the genre was so different, this was really wow, and this everything was so slick, and that's what really grabbed me with this album in the beginning. You notice that the guitar playing first and foremost, and then these sort of evocative lyrics. But I want to move now on to track 2. And this is called Water of Love. Now, Pick Withers, the drummer, is an absolutely great drummer. And I have to say, I liked him the best. In the whole of the Dire Straits thing, I love this period of theirs because they're playing so tight, so much like a band with almost no studio engineering, and I love it. But one of the things that you would never have today, I think, that you get on this album. Now it starts with a clave. A clave are like 2 little wooden sticks, sticks, and a percussionist hits them together, and you get this lovely sound. You'll hear it, but listen very, very, very carefully, because the 5th one, dunk 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 dunk, you'll hear sounds very slightly different. Now it might be that he slightly mishit it or whatever, or it may be deliberate. But if you listen really, really carefully, especially with headphones or whatever, you will hear that it's slightly different. Now in modern studio recording, they'll probably just hit it twice and they would just use some kind of repeat system, and every hit would be exactly the same. And it's this mechanical perfection that a lot of studios look for today that makes me sad, to be honest, because we aren't perfect. We're human beings, and that's what makes it great for me. Now, Pick Withers drumming, it's crisp, crisp, crisp. I have a theory, a feeling about drummers, and that is great drummers, you shouldn't really be aware of them. You should just be hearing the music. And then every so often you might hear a little doo-doo-doo-dum or something. You think, oh yeah, it's a drummer. But for the rest, they should just disappear back into the band. Charlie Watts could do that often. Pick Withers is an absolute master at it. And look out for this slide guitar sound. And for me, hearing it for the very first time was like, oh, it's a bit like J.J. Cale, but it wasn't. It was different. Here we go. Let's have a little listen to this. Now, I don't know if you wrote this track in London, but again, we've got the water theme coming back. Water of Love, it's called. High and dry in the long hot day, lost and lonely every way. Got the flats all around me, sky up above. Then the picture of his flats where he lived in these tall blocks of flats, probably was in London. I need a little water of love. I've been too long lonely and my heart feels pain, crying out for some soothing rain. I believe I've taken enough. I need a little water of love. Water of love deep in the ground. No water here to be found. Someday, baby, when the river runs free, I'll carry that water. It'll carry that water of love to me. Maybe he was thinking of T.S. Eliot and the Wastelands, who knows? But we know he studied English. So literature would be definitely something you would be aware of. Now I'm going to move on to track 3, which is called Setting Me Up. And here we're going to have some very, very, very tight drumming from Pick Withers. Again, really cool guitar, and the first hint of what I call John Illsley's on the beat bass line, which becomes really a characteristic of Dire Straits, in the same way that the drumming pattern in The Police, with the use of the sort of the snare drum on the offbeat, tack, tack, was something that really Police, when you listen to the Police, you can think, that's the Police. I think John Illsley's bass playing here, when you listen to it and you think about it, I think it really becomes a hallmark of Dire Straits. And when you hear it, think about, like, for example, much later, Money for Nothing, and the way that that's structured. Okay, again, you get this real feeling of a live band in the studio. Okay. You hear that drumming, it's so tight, and then with John's bass, it's really, with the emphasis on the first beat of every bar, it's really, this is the beginning of the Dire Straits sound that we all came to know and love, even in later ones. I'm going to move straight on to track 4 of the album, which is the Six Blade Knife, because this one opens with John's amazing bass playing, and the bass playing gives a lot of space to allow Mark and David to fill that with their guitars. And one of the things is to listen out for is this little guitar ting, and it's on the 4th beat before the track is even beginning. So you can imagine going 1, 2, 3, ding, boom. And this is something that comes back, and I find it interesting because it's quite quiet and you can miss it. But it's typically the sort of thing that a working band would do to start a track live in a pub. And sometimes maybe the drummer would hit a triangle or the side of a hi-hat, the bell of the hi-hat, who knows. But I think it's really, really interesting. Have a little listen to this. Going to stop it because I want you to point out also this wonderful rhythm guitar playing, and I presume it's David, and it's on the right channel. What he's doing is so simple sounding but extremely difficult to do, and get the timing exactly right. God knows I've tried. And this is one of the things that you'll find when you have people, cover bands, if they're not brilliant at their backing and timing, if it's not perfect, it sounds okay, but it isn't great. And this is why I call this a great recording. I'm going to just start it again. Listen again for that opening. Got it? You see how much space the band, the rhythm section, bass and drums are giving the guitarist. So even that really simple little chords on the rhythm are really clear and moving forward, and just give the color, the chordal color, so that whatever Mark Knopfler does on the top is just given, just comes forward. It's lovely. It's really a minimalist, a lesson in minimalism. And a lot of bands could do, and producers could do, with taking a leaf out of their book here and going back to that, excuse me. So right now we're going to move on to a track called Southbound Again. And again, he mentions the River Tyne. I think his Southbound is probably him singing about traveling from Newcastle down to London. Maybe he's a bit homesick for Newcastle. Maybe he's homesick for his parents. At the time he's writing it, they're not big superstars, don't forget. So there can be an element of melancholy, of not really of achieving his potential. Will he ever become successful? And I think it's that makes this so powerful, this record, because they have no idea at all what's about to happen in the next year after this album comes out. Southbound Again. I don't know if I'm going or leaving home. Boy, got to be moving. Seems like the boy is bound to roam. Southbound again. Got no money. I've got no place to go. That woman's with her lover boy. Never want to see her face no more. Every single time I roll across the rolling River Tyne, I get the same old feeling. Every time I'm moving down the line. Southbound again. Last night I felt like crying. Right now I'm sick of living, but I'm going to keep on trying. Those are the lyrics of a poet trying to come to terms with the fact that he's 27, 28, nothing is happening. He's tried so hard with his life. He's got an idea of what he wants to do. It ain't happening. And I just find it amazing. And again, remember, it's Saturday Night Fever or the cinema. It's ABBA, and there's punk, and there's the Ramones, and there's Talking Heads, and Ian Dury. And, Ian Dury's bringing out, Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick, the same album. Before that was Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll Is All Your Body Needs. He's obviously thinking, who the hell am I with my hippie-ish sort of education and poetry and the band? I can imagine all that self-doubt coming through. Maybe I'm overthinking it, and maybe I will be corrected by a lot of people, but I do find that so interesting. Okay, here we go. You hear that da 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 in the rhythm guitar there. Really, really tricky. And it's not that they got that on a loop. I'm absolutely sure that David's having to really keep that really, really tight in order to allow the whole of the rest of it to come together. One wrong move in that rhythm and the whole thing falls apart. And it stands out really, really a long way indeed. So now, we are moving on to a track that I think recognize. It's the opening track on side 2. It's called, of course, Sultans of Swing. This is the track that broke them into fame, into stardom. What I'd like to suggest is to listen to Pick Withers' snare drum. Again, it's the same as before, where we had the guitar opening a dunk, boom in. It does exactly the same in the beginning of this track. And it's something that people may overlook or not notice. Now, again, we're back with John's really incredible rhythmic defining bass. And he's not playing all the time. He's not rushing to fill in lots of notes. Sometimes there's some bars that he's basically not playing, and then he will do a little run. But when he does a run, it's just pushing the feeling of momentum forward, keeping that track rolling when it needs it and holding back when it doesn't. And that is what makes great playing in my opinion. So again, the rhythm guitar playing is wonderful. I mean, it's no coincidence that Mark Knopfler is singing about the rhythm guitar playing, but it is superb here. And Pick Withers' delicious subtle hi-hat and cymbal work, it makes this amazing. And when I hear bands playing and copying and emulating, I'm always listening to the backing tracks to think, are they capturing the backing? Because that is what is important. Get that right, and whatever you do on top, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. So here we go. Now, I'm not going to play much of this because we know it inside out. But what I want to do is play it again. But the part I want to play, but just, if you would, humor me, just listen to John's bass playing. Okay? So just listen to the bass playing, focus solely on that, and try not to hear anything else.
Check out Guitar George. He knows all the chords. But it's strictly rhythm, he doesn't want to make it cry or sing. If any old guitar is all he can afford, when he gets up under the lights to play his thing.
Now, I find it interesting because when you hear that his bass playing, he's not always playing the most obvious note, is he? And I just find that absolutely fascinating. And again, with his so subtle drumming, it's incredible. Cool. Right, so now we're moving rapidly on to a track called In the Gallery. This time, the band is going to come in bang on the beat. There's no chup boom. It's together. And I wonder how they did it live. It must have been lovely to see. Of course, you can just count in, but it's just a very, very nice effect. And also lyrically, I think it's very interesting. He's obviously Mark Knopfler, identifying with a struggling artist who ends up dying, and once he's dead, suddenly all the art galleries are interested in his work. They didn't pay any attention at all. They were patronizing to him because he was a coal miner who did sculptures, and they thought, oh yeah, that's nothing. Then when he died, suddenly the collectors and the galleries decided, no, he was a genius and great, and woof, all his work is starting to be sold for a hell of a lot of money. Can't help but think looking back on it, that maybe there was an element also of Mark Knopfler thinking, well, I might never make it either, and this is what I'm doing is not valued, and it has no meaning or whatever. And I could die in obscurity, and maybe later on someone else will discover my songs and make them famous. I don't know. Again, maybe I'm reading too much, but it's very, very poignant when you see, and then you get an artist says he doesn't want to paint at all. He takes an empty canvas and sticks it on the wall. The birds of a feather, all the phonies and all of the fakes, while the dealers, they get together and they decide who gets the breaks and who's going to be in the gallery. No lies he wouldn't compromise, no junk, no bits of string, and all the lies we subsidize, that just don't mean a thing. I've got to say he passed away in obscurity, and now all the vouchers are coming down from the tree, so he's going to be in the gallery. Now, at that time, my girlfriend was studying art at a local art school, and her professor suggested that they could take an empty canvas and take it out into the nature and leave it there for a length of time and bring it back and see what's happened to the canvas. Whether you can call that art. Now, Mark is saying here, and all the lies we subsidize, that some of these artists who are doing this are getting subsidies from the government or whatever. So there's a bitterness, there's an observation, there's the reality that can be two levels of existence, for those with the education and the degrees and the good backgrounds, the backgrounds which people seem to identify with. Anyway, that is the track we were referring to in the gallery. Let's play that. Love the guitar sound here. Guitar work is so beautiful, isn't it? There's lovely sort of slides and wonderful little turns that Mark is doing there, and all the time the backing track is so precise, so crisp, and they're just doing that basically live in the studio. I think this is a great track, and I think it sums up very nicely where he was, how he was feeling, and the band's ability to deliver on really complex things. And yet also there's anger, but there's also a little bit of fun in it, the way that the band is moving and interplaying with each other. So now we're going to move on. Sadly, we're getting near the end, but we're not there yet, because we're at a track called The Wild West End. And I've been talking a lot, or mentioning a number of times, Mark Knopfler's studies of English and his obvious knowledge through those studies and whatever, and interest in poetry, and the observational nature of the poet. Many poets, especially in the 19th century, were observing nature, were observing things and describing them in ways that the reader could imagine and engage and see what they were describing for themselves, of course, way before the time of television and movies and things like that. And this is a very nice kind of reporting style on the next song, which is Wild West End. It's somewhere between poetry. Well, it is poetry, but there's a reporting style, there's a beautiful observation, and it's something that I've always admired. So I'm going to try and read this to you. Stepping out to Andalucci's for my coffee beans, checking out the movies and the magazines. Waitress, she watches me crossing from the Barraco bar. I'm getting a pickup for my steel guitar. I saw you walking out Shaftesbury Avenue. Excuse me for talking. I want to marry you. This is 7th Street to me. Don't be so proud. You're just another angel in the crowd. And I'm walking in the Wild West End, walking with your wild best friend. Here in this verse, this is the point I wanted to make. And my conductress on the number 19, she was a honey. Pink toenails and hands all dirty with money. Greasy hair, easy smile, made me feel 19 for a while. And that's what I like. You see, you see the conductress, you see he makes the observations of how she looks. She was a honey, so obviously there was some attraction towards her. But he notices the toenails, of course, but the hands dirty with money. In the days when the conductress, the woman on the bus, for those who wouldn't have known, in the old days in London, we had double-decker buses and also single-decker buses. And the conductress would sell tickets to people getting onto the bus, and they would have to pay with coins. And obviously those coins were dirty, and he could observe how her hands were dirty in that way. So let's have a little listen to Wild West End. This is track 8 on the album.
For my coffee beans, checking out the movies and the magazines.
Now, when I was preparing this video, I was listening to this track and I was thinking to myself, just like I did when preparing for the Ambient 1 great recordings video, the Brian Eno Ambient 1 Music for Airports. I recognize that tune, that intro. What is it? And then I thought, yeah, I know what it is. Have a listen to this.
Hovering by my suitcase, trying to find a warm place to spend the night. Heavy rains are falling, seems I hear your voice calling, it's alright. A rainy night in Georgia, a rainy night in Georgia. Lord, I believe it's raining all over the world.
Now, it is a completely different song, but can you hear that introduction where you hear that sound? Just the beginning. Well, I think, okay, the guitar lick is similar. Then I thought, okay, I knew that it was Brooke Benton singing it. I subsequently found out it was in 1970, so 7 years before they record this. But the song, I didn't know who wrote it, and I looked it up, and it's written by Tony Joe White, who was a guitarist and a songwriter. And it transpires that Mark Knopfler, probably after 1970, became good friends with Tony Joe White. So I just think it's a very interesting coincidence, homage, significant thing. And I just like it. I like this thing. And this is the Wild West End. And obviously, Rainy Night in Georgia, he's talking about this situation. Actually, the mood is very similar, isn't it? Okay, so now we're on to track 9, which is Lions. And again, I'll talk about the intro in a minute. Just have a listen to some of these lyrics, these great lyrics from Mark Knopfler. Red sun, go down, way over dirty town. Starlings are sweeping around crazy shoals. A girl is there, high-heeling across the square. Wind blows around in her hair and the flags upon the poles. Waiting in the crowd to cross at the light, she looks around to find a face she can like. Church bell clinging on, trying to get a crowd for evensong. Nobody cares to depend upon the chime it plays. They're all in the station praying for trains, congregation late again. It's getting darker all the time these flagpole days. Drunk old soldier, he gives her a fright. He's a crazy lion, howling for a fight. Strap hanging, gunshot sound, doors slamming on the overground. Starlings are tough, but the lions are made of stone. Her evening paper is horror torn, but there's hope later for Capricorns. Her lucky stars give her just enough to get her home. Then she's reading about a swing to the right, but she's thinking about a stranger in the night. I'm thinking about the lions tonight. What happened to the lions? It's lovely writing, isn't it? You know, it reminds me of D.J. Enright's poem, The Noodle Vendor's Flute, in a strange way. There's a similar kind of phrasing that I like in this work. And the line that sticks with me after all these years is the line, these flagpole days. And sometimes in the autumn, like it is now, whereas at the time I'm recording this, with the leaves falling, you get the wind blowing and the ropes of the flags rattle and tap against the flagpoles, making that sound. And I just wonder if that's what he was thinking about. This is track 9, Lions. Lovely, this piece is. This is one of my favorite tracks on the album, actually. It's the last track of the album. And it's interesting, it's the last track, and they kind of open it again with this very, very quiet point. And I just wonder if there was a discussion or a conversation about how can we open with a way to make sure we grab the listener's attention. Because playing that on vinyl, unless your record player is perfect, it's extremely difficult to hear that very, very opening to the track. So I want to just play a little bit more, and I'm not going to play it right through to the end, because it's just, I want to share with you the feeling you have as you get to the end of this wonderful, wonderful album. Let's just see what we have here. Sort of fade out that goes on, and bringing little elements in, and yet fading at the time. It fades a bit later than this on the actual record. I think that style is reminiscent of their later work too, and you can see where it came from on the Communique album and Love Over Gold and all the rest of it. But for me, if I could only have one LP from Dire Straits, only one, I might take this one, you know, because it's so authentic, it's so complete, it's them as a band, breaking out against all odds. They don't know when they're making this album that they're going to be such an enormous global success. And I've always got Money for Nothing in my head, and all of those other great songs that you have, and you know, Every Street and all the rest of it. But so this is really, really for me great. The other album of theirs which really grabbed me too was obviously the album with Romeo and Juliet on, and the first side of that album with the three tracks, the way they just flow into one another. That was incredible, that album. But this is the one I'm going to keep in my record collection. I've had it once, now I've got it again. I hope you've enjoyed this little talk. I hope I didn't go on too long for you. If you have been, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Enjoy the music.